Welcome to Commander Central, episode 195, and today we'll be taking a look at the Ikoria set. I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.
Max, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. I officially have set a new record of not wearing jeans.
Nice.
We are on day 14, so the previous record was 12.
That's impressive.
Yes.
I'm starting to, my beard's getting a little bit bothersome, but I'm going to let it go. I want to see if I can go true mountain man with it, but I'm finding myself as I sit here and like do work or something, playing with it and like twirling it through my fingers. It's getting long enough that I can actually do things with it, so that's kind of been distracting. And I did wind up with my last Amazon order. I bought some beard oil, so I've been it's long enough now I have to actually do things with it in terms of like maintenance.
The facial hair I do have is getting to that point as well. I can't grow facial hair like on my cheeks yet. Like it's coming in, but I'm blonde, so it's so faint you can't see it.
Sure.
I'm praying that I come out of this quarantine social distancing stuff with a nice beard for once in my life. And that is the only positive thing I can say about Wisconsin extending the stay-at-home order till the end of May.
So you can stay home through the worst parts of the growing out the beard season.
Yes.
Yeah, I've gotten past the annoying phase and into getting to be like Santa Claus. And man, the gray really sticks out when it gets to this length. There's no pretending otherwise.
So beard oil really means beard dye is what I'm
Yeah, right. Thinking. Yeah. I think I'm past the point where I can subtly dye it without it looking ridiculous. I haven't played any games this week because we had the Ikoria pre-release, so EDH Recast didn't do any streaming. I was going to play with some friends. We didn't get around to it. The show will air on Monday, I believe, correct?
Correct.
We're going to try to get some games in this weekend, so hopefully by that Thursday Deck Tech show, we might have a few things to talk about. I was thinking about maybe proxying up a couple of the new Ikoria cards for decks of mine that I'm planning on putting in just to try out since we're still a ways away from seeing anything. But we know the cards already, and I've already found slots for them, so I might do that and see if I can actually get an appearance with a few of these cards over the course of the weekend if I do play. So we might have something to talk about there. Other than that, it's pretty quiet. There's like no real news. We had this huge burst of preview cards, and then it's been quiet. I guess the new secret lair did get announced, which is just some lands.
Is that official? Like that is an official thing?
Yes,
okay.
It's an official thing. It's 5 basics that have like the Godzilla art, basically like a kaiju in the distance kind of on them, not entirely dissimilar to the ones on the Jace ones in Ixalan where he's wandering around.
But those came in booster packs.
Yeah, these are a special thing. So I don't know. Actually, people complain about everything, but like if there's going to be a premium product, this should be the last thing you complain about. It's basic lands. If you don't want them, you're not missing out on anything at all. It's affecting the value of nothing. It's just like this is the ultimate. If you don't want to participate in this premium product, you're out. You're missing nothing, and it's not affecting you at all. This is the kind of thing I like to see them do.
Yeah, I mean, this is the secret lair that probably appeals to the least amount of Magic players in the population because it is so specific.
Yep. 5
basic lands with the Godzilla art in them. The Throne of Eldraine lands were very similar, but at least they were snow lands. So,
right.
If EDH players, you need those snow lands or you need that extra snow land to, Field of the Dead stuff. I understand that. And they looked cool. I mean, these lands look cool as well, but these are, like you said, it's not devaluing anything, so these are something cool. If you're into it, buy it, whatever.
And if you're not, you're out nothing. So. Right. Well, if you in listener land would like to reach out to us and tell us what you think about the new secret lair or how you're weathering your social distancing time or quarantine time, how would you do that, Max?
You can find us on Twitter by searching CMDR Central. We're on Facebook by searching CMDR Central. You can also find us over on YouTube where you can hear us talk and see that gorgeous overlay that Rafael Garcia does for us every week by searching CMDR Central. And otherwise, as I typically say, just Google us. Just don't go past maybe page 5.
You can also find us at patreon.com.
Head over to patreon.com/CMDR Central and check out our reward tiers, such as the Decks You Play series and, guesting on the show if this social distancing thing ever ends.
Right, exactly. We've gotten one of those under our belt, and we have a couple more to do, but quarantine has thrown a bit of a monkey into that wrench.
Yes.
So we will hopefully get back to that very soon, and we'll have another Deck Tech coming actually this Thursday for our Thursday show. So should we just get straight into it here, Max?
Yeah, so we're talking Ikoria proper today.
Yeah, and we always try to find a different way to do these. Number one, just to keep ourselves kind of entertained, but there's a gazillion Commander shows doing set reviews, and to try to shake things up a little bit in the format, what we're going to try to do this time is EDH Rec already has people have submitted decks and made changes to their decks, and they've already got Ikoria cards added to their database. So we're just going to kind of talk about the top 10-ish in the various categories from Ikoria that people are already building. So, for example, if you look at the Commanders page on EDH Rec for the Ikoria set, the most popular commander right now is Riel the Everwise. Riel is 1 and is it 3 mana for a human wizard who's a 0/3. Riel the Everwise gets +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. And whenever you discard one or more cards the first time each turn, draw that many cards. So there's 70 decks, 69 decks, I guess, technically, right now of Riel the Everwise that are put together out there that EDH Rec has found. That's the commander everyone's building over any of the rest. What are your thoughts on Riel here, Max?
Super interesting design.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree.
Spellslinger-esque type commander. The discard clause is interesting, something we don't see very often. In my opinion, it does kind of nombo with the game itself, because during your discard phase, if you have to discard, you're going to discard, and you got to do it all over again. You know, you don't get to keep, all 8 cards if you had to go down 1, because there is another cleanup step after that.
Oh, sure. I mean, it still gives you the filter, I guess. You can keep the best of the worst.
Put something else in your graveyard, pumps Riel.
What's nice about how it's worded, too, is it does work. Because it just says discard, that means it does work with cycling. So, this could easily have said whenever you cycle one or more cards first time each turn, draw that many cards. But it doesn't. It just says whenever you discard one. So if you pitch it from cycling, or you pitch it from basically any kind of mechanic, whether it's a wheel or whether it's, a faithless looting kind of effect, you get the draw. So it can work in any way you build the deck, whether it's like a dedicated version of one of those mechanics or any kind of mixture of them. There's a lot of freedom here, I think, to do a lot of things with this commander. My one immediate, I feel like you're probably going to build it with wheels, I would guess, because you're going to be able to basically turn a wheel into, discard 4, draw 7, and then draw 4 more because of the 4 you discarded.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, you're probably going to be looking to go down to hit combo pieces or extra turns, I think is the easy, obvious way to build it. But I don't know. You don't have to go that route. The fact that it gets +1/+0 for each sorcery or instant in your graveyard, you kind of have a win condition on the commander, too. If you can give a little bit of evasion, you will probably very quickly be able to just command damage somebody in one shot.
Oh, definitely. Let alone maybe building this as its own deck. This goes great in something like Mizzix, because you always need a backup in that deck if you can't get Mizzix on the battlefield. So that's pretty cool. It does slot into a lot of other Izzet type decks, your Niv Mizzet decks.
Or your other wheel decks like Nekusar or Scarab God.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, this is a card, I think by the time we're recording this, I already recorded the EDH Recast review, and the comment I made there, I said I wouldn't be surprised if this was the most popular commander and the most popular legend that was in other decks.
Ooh, hitting both fields there.
Because it's just so good in all those other kind of wheel decks as well. So yeah, it's a neat card, but it also has a clause because it only triggers the first time each turn you do it. You aren't going to get those infinite loops just off that ability, like you kind of would with Anjay Falconwrath, where you can just do it over and over and over each turn until you can find that one combo piece and take those 20-minute turns. Or Gitrog Monster kind of does the same thing. There is a cap, so like it is somewhat limited in how many goldfish turns you can take. And I think that's probably good too.
Yeah.
So why don't you read the next card for us here, Max?
The next one is Nethroi, Apex of Death. It's 2 and Abzan for a 5/5 legendary cat nightmare beast. It has Death Touch and Lifelink, and whenever this creature... Oh, and it has Mutate, so it can mutate for 4 hybrid Selesnya black, because that's a confusing casting cost.
Right.
It has Death Touch and Lifelink, and whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield.
To the battlefield, mind you.
So this is a really cool take on Protean Hulk, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's basically Protean Hulk the commander, kind of, that has the extra step of forcing you to put the stuff in the graveyard first.
Mm-hmm. I like this a lot.
It's definitely the kind of thing that I feel like is going to be a little bit dangerous when someone has it across the table from you. You have to be watching all the time that graveyard to be like, okay, what's in there? Am I going to totally get just, is there like some kind of a combo they're going to immediately throw into play and end the game?
Probably.
But, to cast out that mutate cost, it's 7 mana. That's a decent amount. Granted, you're in green and you can ramp up to it, but like it's still not something someone's going to be doing on turn 3 very often. More than likely, even if with 1 or 2 ramp pieces, turn 5 at the earliest is when they're going to cast this. There has to be another creature in play to mutate it. They have to have things in the graveyard to then bring back to do it with. I mean, it feels like this sets Yarok or Muldrotha, I guess, maybe in terms of power. But there's a lot of things you have to do to make it work, too.
Oh, totally.
So I'll be curious to see how powerful it is. I think it's going to be relatively strong, but I feel like it's probably also going to be somewhat constrained, too. So up next here, the third most popular commander, and these 3 are all at 60 plus decks, so they're all relatively close, and I must admit I'm not really shocked to see these 3 together either. And the last one is Keenan, Bhandar, Prodigy, who is the Simic commander. Only 2 mana to cast, and it's a green and a blue for a human druid. 2/2, whenever you tap a non-land permanent 4 mana, add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced. Okay,
sure.
So
That's
your
Simic
mana dorks,
stuff, yeah.
Your mana dorks just make 2, all your mana rocks make 2. And there's also a 7 mana ability here, which this is a really good card without this mana sink, but it's got a mana sink on it for 5 in Simic, so 7 total. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a non-human creature card from among them onto the battlefield and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Simic's doing Simic things.
Yeah, I mean, it feels maybe a little bit like a fixed Thrasios. Because it does a similar thing.
Similar. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a fixed Thrasios. Thrasios does something very specific. Gets
True.
you lands. Ugh. I love this commander.
Well, here's the thing. It's a really, really good card, but I don't know what I would do with it other than just generate a ton of mana.
That's all I want to do with it, to be honest. This and Nyxborn Ancient, and then boom, and then have enough do its ability, upteen million times, and drop a Crater Hoof and win.
Sure, and that's what you'll probably see. And, this is a really strong card, but again, we keep throwing a lot of butts out there. I don't know if it's any stronger than, half a dozen other existing Simic commanders, and it doesn't do anything, I think, that is to create, that you don't know it's going to happen. Like, oh, I see a Keenan deck, okay, there's going to be a bunch of mana dorks and a bunch of rocks, and the big amount of mana is going to be used to find some giant creature or, some kind of an overrun effect. Maybe someone maybe there's some other kind of a combo they're going to dig down to and try to find, but some kind of like a variant on Pickles Lock or something. You're in the colors for it. But again, it feels like something that you can probably deal with.
For sure.
I'll be curious to see if this shows up in other decks.
I don't know. I mean, I think of like Prime Speaker Vanifar, that's kind of like a combo-y deck. I don't think this is better than that because it requires so much mana to do.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I don't know if you really want to put this in your Vanifar deck if it's a pod deck where you know what you're going for every time.
Yeah, I feel like the amount of mana dorks and rocks you probably need to have in a deck to make this pay off when it's not your commander. I don't know if many decks want to be just running that natively. Maybe. But I can't think of it. Just looking at it, I'm just like, no other decks jump out at me where I like, I look at Rael and I'm like, well, that's definitely going to Nekuzar or Scarab God or something. I look at Keenan and I'm like, I don't know where somebody jams this necessarily.
It goes in the shoe lane decks because it's a cheap creature that's going to, draw you a card, put a land into play, and then tap all your mana rocks.
That's good call. And you're already running a ton of mana dorks in that deck anyway.
Right.
So why not double the mana they produce? Yeah, that makes sense. Good call. Okay, so the next one here we have is the first of the companions. In this case, it's being used as a commander. This is Zerta the Dawnwaker. It's 1 hybrid Boros for an elemental fox. It has companion, so each permanent card in your starting deck must have an activated ability, which is next to impossible probably to achieve in commander.
Do land
really, really difficult.
Here's my question, and yes, I play this game and I don't know the answer to this. Do basic lands have an activated ability? Is it tap, add red?
I believe that would count, yes.
Okay.
But that would rule out, I guess, there's a few lands that don't. I don't know. I'm trying to think that have like a static ability. For example, the ones that give bans with from legends don't make mana. They just say legends you control have bans with other green legends or whatever it is. So I guess there's technically even some lands that wouldn't make that. But for the most part, I think I think the mana abilities count. So
yeah.
But still, like, I don't know, having every creature require an activated ability is a pretty big ask, I think.
Especially in Boros. So
especially in Boros.
I mean, because like Mentor isn't an activated ability, that's a triggered ability. Wow, this would be tough to build around to make it the companion clause true, but
yes.
We aren't worried about that right now. We're worried about it as your commander.
Absolutely. And as a commander, what matters here is the next bit of text on the card, which says abilities you activate that aren't mana abilities cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana cost of that cost to less than 1 mana, and it also has an ability that is activated that says tap for 1, target creature can't block this turn. So again, that part is probably just to give it an activated ability, so it counts for the deck. But making activated abilities cost 2 less is relevant just because, I mean, you just generate infinite mana if you have Basalt Monolith or Grim Monolith out, I believe. Because the untap effect on those costs 2 less, so they can generate more to untap and they cost a tap. Actually, Grim wouldn't even, because Grim costs 4 to untap, so it would get reduced to 2. No, because it makes you 3 though.
Yep, it's infinite.
So even Grim, yeah, so they both generate infinite mana. That right there, your commander interacts with 2 rocks. You are in a deck that has ways to tutor up artifacts in those colors for sure.
Hangerback, Hangerback Walker, Walking Ballista, all those fun artifact X spells.
Any big X damage spell, Fireball, Disintegrate, Earthquake, whatever. I guess probably not Earthquake because it hits you, but like any targeted damage spell with X in the cost, right there, you got it.
You could also go the Voltron route.
Sure, yeah.
Equipment, reducing their equip costs by 2.
Sure.
That's pretty huge.
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways you could build this, and it's a little bit different than what we usually see in Boros. I would guess most people that are building it are probably going the infinite mana route. I don't think this is probably being built as a fair equipment commander, but that option exists. So
true. I definitely think we'll see this over the long term in the top 3 of Boros commanders. Maybe top 5 for sure. Top 3 probably.
Definitely is powerful.
Just because Aurelia. So, right, in Boros commanders right now, it's Feather, Firesong, Dapala. That's your top 3 right there, folks. Dapala has more decks than the original Aurelia.
Wow.
That's scary. Okay,
yeah,
then.
So this could definitely make its way up, I think. For
sure.
All right, what's next here in the list?
Aluna, Apex of Wishes. It's 2 and Teamer for a 6/6 legendary beast elemental dinosaur. It has Mutate for 3 hybrid Gruul blue. It has Flying and Trample, and when this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land permanent card, put that card onto the battlefield or into your hand.
So it's kind of a polymorph effect, or I guess maybe a little bit of a cascade-ish effect too. And you do the choice of putting it in your hand. So if you hit something that you don't want to cast that turn and you want to use later, whether it's Crater Hoof or something along those lines, you do have the option to put it in your hand instead of into play. That seems relatively strong, but I feel like it's probably better in some kind of a big mutate deck than it is at the top of a mutate deck.
Yeah, the fact that the cards get exiled and you don't get them back.
Yeah.
That's huge there. Like typically it's exile until you find the card that fits the condition, then put everything on the bottom of your library or something. This doesn't do that. You lose them. So I think this is really another way for like Teamer all permanents maybe.
Yeah. I do think it's relevant here, the fact that it's a beast elemental dinosaur, but the fact that it's elemental means it does qualify if you're doing elemental stuff in like 3-color Omnath. Mm-hmm. It does give you something that's, can come into play and mutate onto one of your other elementals. And it still has Flying and Trample, so it's still a giant beater for 5 mana, and it's going to generate you some extra value. So I do think this has the potential to also show up in some other decks. It's in weird colors to be in a dinosaur deck, and I don't see a lot of beasts in those colors either, but I do think as an elemental, that's not entirely irrelevant.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. In the tribal scheme, I think it'd be elemental decks, then beast decks. And dinosaur decks, I mean, most of the good dinosaurs are green, and then probably red and white. I don't know how many blue dinosaurs there are besides Nezahal, except for what we probably got here in Ikoria.
Yeah, it's much, much heavier into the Naya colors for sure. Like I said, but 6/6 Flying and Trample is not nothing, so
right.
This definitely is a strong-ish card. Any more? Those are the top 5. Any more that you want to specifically talk about before we move on here?
I kind of want to talk about Winota, Joiner of Forces.
That would probably be the other one I would point out here too.
So this is a legendary human warrior for 2 and Boros. She's a 4/4. Whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn. Put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is what I find interesting, is it wants you to play with both humans and non-humans.
Yes.
So you got to find that balance to where you have the non-humans to trigger the ability, but enough humans to where you're going to hit consistently.
And bear in mind, too, this isn't like a whenever you attack with one or more humans. Non-humans. It's whenever you attack with a non-human creature, just full stop. So if you attack with 3, you get 3 of those triggers.
Right.
That's a really big deal, I think. I've got a rough deck that I've kind of been putting together, and I haven't tweaked it much. I just did a kind of a first draft, and I'm sitting on it to see if I want to build it or not. That's running all humans that do, kind of similar to your Grumgully deck, Max, that do an ETB making a non-human token.
Okay.
Some of them are obviously non-human tokens. There's a Splicer cycle from Mirrodin that they're humans that come into play and make a 3/3 golem. In Kaladesh, there's quite a few humans that make a Thopter when they come into play. But there's also some just from back in the day, they just didn't bother calling the tokens humans. So there's enough creatures that come into play and make a 1/1 soldier, but it's not a human soldier because they didn't specify back then.
Right.
So that way I can stack the deck with 25 humans and guarantee every creature I hit in the ability is a human, but those humans are then making me the non-human tokens that proc the ability on attack.
Okay, so yeah, it's definitely just reverse Grumgully there.
You're right, but that mathematically adds up. If you have 2 of those humans in play that have each made a token, and you swing, and you're going to get 2 triggers because of those non-human tokens that are going to then put 2 humans in play that will make 2 more tokens, meaning next turn you have 4 triggers. You're going to get that army gets big really, really quickly. I think it's maybe not Najeela, but for Boros, that's interesting.
Oh, totally. That's super interesting. I originally went in my mind goblins. So you
definitely
pick maybe the best dozen goblins you want to play with. Not the ones that are going to go tutor or anything, but put both Krangos in there, put, the utility goblins.
Sure.
And then go and fill it out with the humans you really want to be running.
Yeah.
That should keep your curve low. You're in Boros. You'll probably put stuff in there like Hangerback Walker just because it's not a human. It makes not humans, kind of like you said with your version of it. So it's a really cool design. And from what I saw on Twitter today after the preview event on Arena last night, this card's kind of broken in 60 card formats.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people saying this card can go house if you build the deck correctly.
That makes sense. I can totally see that. Any other ones you want to quick touch on here?
Not specifically. I do like there are a lot of both humans and non-humans in this set. I get it. Yeah. It's the humans versus the beasts on Ikoria. They're all interesting. I like the mutate mechanic. I think the more I've seen it, the more I've looked into it. I actually really like the mutate mechanic, so I'm looking forward to playing around with that once all these cards come out.
And there's a few here that even if I wouldn't want to build, I will probably put Cheville, Bane of Monsters, who probably isn't a good commander, but I will probably run him in my Glissa Trader deck. I would guess you're going to put Yorion Sky Nomad, the companion in Azorius colors, in your Brago deck. That's the one that doesn't blink when it ETBs.
I wish I could agree with you there.
No, you're not going to run it?
If it had flash, I totally would, but I don't know when I would want to cast that. I'd have to be in a pretty bad position to cast this on my second main phase to blink, a Cloud Blazer and a Maul Drifter just to draw some cards after.
Sure.
Assuming I hit with Brago during the combat step. If it had flash, yeah, I would totally put it in that deck, but
okay,
it's a little slow and kind of expensive. I mean, you're looking at Conjure's Closet mana. Yeah. I'd rather just run Conjure's Closet.
Okay, all right. So let's move down then, and the next breakup is just basically generic cards, and they're just talking about cards indexed. They don't have them segregated any other way. But 5 of the top 6 here are the new land cycle, the Triome lands, which are basically lands that have all 3 basic land types, and they then therefore tap for the 3 colors of mana of whatever particular wedge they represent.
Any of the 3, yep.
Any of the 3, and there's 5 total for each of the wedges. Also, unnecessarily, kind of, they have cycling 3 on them as well, so you can pitch it for 3 mana, draw a card. That doesn't seem... I don't know. I mean, these are already strictly better versions of the cycle that we got back in cons.
Are they?
Just by those come into play tap 2 and don't have the land types.
I forgot they came in tapped.
Yeah. So at the very least, these are fetchable versions of those lands, and they put the cycling on there too. The cycling seems, I don't know, how often are you going to spend 3 mana to pitch this? I mean, I'm sure you will on occasion, but...
So this is what I find weird. There's also an artifact cycle of mana rocks that do the same thing. They don't come in tapped, but they cost 3 mana, and they have cycling 2.
Yep.
So why do the lands have cycling 3?
I would assume to make them more expensive than the cycling, the bicycle lands we got in Amonkhet that have cycling 2. I would assume they wanted to, since
3 colors, 3 mana.
3 colors, yeah. Since they're better than those just by default, then the cycling would have to cost more.
I
would guess. Do you like these?
No.
Okay. Well, I don't love them either.
I don't like them at all. Like, even
so how's this? If you're running a wedge deck, would you run the 1 in your wedge deck?
No, because I'm probably not running the cons version.
I would probably run them in my 3-color. If I had a 3-color deck on these colors, because I could go fetch it at any point in time, particularly if I'm playing green, the ability to go grab with like a Nature's Lore or whatever and go grab this and like, oh, I'm good now. I have 1 land that makes all my colors. That would probably be worth it, but that's it.
I want to go on a little rant here.
Okay. Rant away.
About a year ago in our Slack, which you can join by heading over to patreon.com/CMDR Central.
You Jason altered that up.
I did really well. Someone asked about when do you, on turn 1 in a green deck, do you fetch for your cycling land like you're the one from Amonkhet? Or do you go for your shock, or do you go for, a basic? In my Dromoka deck and in Brago, I run the cycling lands, from Amonkhet.
Yep.
When I fetch with like a Windswept Heath in Dromoka, I don't go for that land first unless we're playing, it's the last game of the night and we're in a hurry, then sure, I'll go grab it because I saw it first. I don't play EDH competitively in the sense that I'm out to win every game,
right? But
I also don't want to play to where I'm making poor decisions, and in my opinion, on turn 1, if I'm cracking a Windswept Heath, I'm going to go get a land that comes in untapped because I want to make my opponents think I have an answer if needed on turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. I consider those bicycle lands draw spells in my Dromoka deck. If I draw it late game, cool. I can pay the 2 mana, I can cycle it, I can draw a card. If I happen to have it in my opening hand, sure, I'm going to keep that opening hand if I have, enough other stuff to go with. But it's never something I go fetch with a fetch land or Sky Shroud Claim or Farseek.
Sure.
Unless my Savannah and my Temple Garden and my Canopy Vista already are out.
Okay. I see that. I don't know if I worry too much about it on turn 1. Like, I don't know if the bluff is necessarily worth it for me, but I see the point. I would say this. I wouldn't run these in a 4 or 5 color deck, I don't think.
No, you want your lands coming in untapped, or you're choosing not to have them come in tapped because you have shock lands.
Yes. And it's not like these are a budget option. Now, maybe the value will drop, but like, at least for right now, they're all going for $12-ish a piece.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not even the kind of thing that you can say like, well, they're a budget replacement for Shocklands. At least right now they're not. Maybe they will be in 3 months.
Yeah, I think time will tell. I do agree they are a better version of the original ones we got in cons. The cycling is cool, but I just...
And maybe if you're playing the cycling deck that cares about cycling or cares about madness or something, then that's a different thing. Discarding can be relevant in some decks, and that's some added value. But I'm kind of with you. I think you need to have something extra reason for them. They're fine. I don't love them.
Off the top of your head, and I'm throwing you on the spot, can you think of anything that is currently in Standard or in Ikoria that specifically says go get a mountain, go get a forest?
I don't think so, because I think Fabled Passage just says
basic land.
Basic on it, so I don't think these are fetchable by anything currently in Standard.
Right, and like Prismatic Vista says the same thing. Basic land, I believe, right?
Yeah, and that's not even Standard legal. Is there, I guess, Evolving Wilds, but I think that just says basic too. That just says basic. I know it does.
So I wonder if we're getting some sort of fetch coming in the future
down the road that cares.
Or else why, unless you're doing it for EDH. I mean, they did make a point saying they're trying to bring more commander feelings into Ikoria.
Yeah, there could well be something down the road that matters for sure.
Or they just did it for all us commander players.
Right. Yeah, that could be. So you mentioned the Mana Rock cycle. There's 5 of these. What are your thoughts on those, Max?
I wish Chris was here to talk about these. That's what my thought is, because Chris is the Locket lover of the show. He will argue anybody under the table that Lockets are great in EDH, and I will sit there and eat my popcorn and watch that argument happen, because I've lost that argument a handful of times. I feel like these are like the Lockets. At first, I didn't like them, but the fact that they cycle is really nice. I actually like them better than the Lockets.
I think they're way more interesting in a Standard environment than they are in Commander, where we already have something like Commander Sphere that technically can be cycled once. It's equivalent of this when it's already in play. by spending the 1 mana to sacrifice it, or Mind Stone or Dreamstone Hedron kind of cards. I think we already have cards that are kind of better versions of this in Commander that functionally do the same thing. So they're okay. I think if you have a cycling deck, I would run them. I don't know if I would run them outside of that.
Do they come in the Commander decks? That's what I'm looking at right now.
Don't think they do. I don't believe they do.
Well, then that's boring, because then I guess that's how you get, you make sure your Commander players buy these cards, because everyone that wants to build a Jeskai deck, especially if they want to build the cycling one, probably wants this card.
They definitely want that, probably want that one, yeah. So let's talk about another cycle, because why not? Because there's a few of these in the top list already, and we got the Ultimatum Cycle that was originally from Shards of Alara, or at least the Alara block. I don't remember which set they were in. They were probably in...
I think it was Shards.
Was it Shards? Okay. I would guess you're probably correct. But it was definitely the block, and we won't bother looking it up because it's not that relevant, but they did the wedge version of that. So we got various ultimatums in the wedge colors this time. These are all really good, right? Is that my imagination? Or are they all pretty decent?
They're all at least decent.
The Jeskai one, I think, might have been the most boring one. But like the Ruinous Ultimatum is the Mardu one. Destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. Yeah, it's 7 mana, and yeah, it requires all colored pips. But like, man, if I was playing a Mardu deck, as long as it wasn't maybe the fastest Edgar Markov deck around, I'd probably be running that.
I think I'd even try to run it in the fastest Edgar Markov deck around, because you're either going to kill your opponents or you're going to make sure you can kill your opponents.
I mean, man, it's really tough to, unless somebody is holding Teferi's Protection or something, or, a Boros Charm or whatever, some way to make yourself all indestructible, you definitely, that's probably a win the game in a turn or two card.
Oh, for sure. Well, especially on turn 7, if you're only casting it on turn 7.
And the Abzam one is really good too. That's the return any number of permanent cards with different names. So in Commander,
everything.
Unless you're playing a rat deck, all of them from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Or you have a bunch of basic lands in your graveyard.
I guess, right? Yeah, you got a bunch of forests in there somehow. But like for the most part, it just says living death your entire graveyard, not just creatures.
Oh, for sure. And not even living death. It's just bring everything back.
Right, everything. Right, bring back all your things and lose nothing. Right, Living Death loses stuff in play. This doesn't even do that. This just brings all your stuff back. Again, I'm playing Abzan. I'm probably going to give it a try.
Oh, especially because a lot of the Abzan stuff we've seen between Ikoria and the Commander decks is all graveyard-centric.
Yeah, and it's always nice to have what is functionally a win condition on a single card.
Oh, for
that's
sure.
That's useful in Commander, and that's what this is. So, yeah, I mean, there's... It's a cool cycle, but it's also one of those things I think it's kind of fairly costed, because that's 7 mana and that's 7 pips. You do have to spend it.
I do find it odd that 2 of the 5 exile themselves.
Yes.
The Sultai and the Temur one. So Emergent Ultimatum is the Sultai one. You search your library for up to 3 monocolored cards with different names and exile them. An opponent chooses one of those cards and it gets shuffled into your library, and the rest you may cast the other cards without paying their mana costs. And then the Temur one is Genesis Ultimatum. You look at the top 5 cards of your library, put any number of permanent cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest in your hand, and then you exile Genesis Ultimatum. See, that's the one I think that is the most underwhelming.
Yes, I would tend to agree.
I actually like the
Temur one. Yeah, that's true.
I like the Jeskai one. The Jeskai one does target player gains 5 life, it deals 5 damage to any target, and you draw 5 cards. So for the same amount of mana as the Genesis Ultimatum, you're still drawing 5 cards.
I think the Jeskai one's actually probably the least splashy on paper, but it's also consistent.
It does what Jeskai does. Draws cards, deals damage, gains life.
Yeah, kind of. It's all right there. I unfortunately don't have any decks that can run any of these. I don't have any wedge decks.
Nor do I.
So the Ultimatum Cycle is entirely out for me. But these are the kind of cards that, like, in the future, if I do go to build a Mardu deck, I'm definitely going to be taking a look at Ruinous. Or if I go to build an Abzan deck, I'm going to be looking at Eerie Ultimatum. So they're all very interesting. Let's talk about another cycle here, since we're talking cycles. There's a Mythos Cycle, which are monocolored cards that have a kind of a tag or kicker, I guess, almost, in the text, that if you spend the additional mana that's in the wedge, so like Mythos of Snapdax, for example, is 2 white. Each player chooses an artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control and sacrifices the rest. And if black or red was spent as the colorless mana in that mana cost, you choose the permanents each player sacrifices instead. it's a monocolored card that's only usable in that particular wedge, and it has essentially 2 modes based on how you want to spend your mana. Again, I have no decks that can run these, but they all are relatively interesting, beginning with the Myth of Snapdrax, which winds up being basically a 1 mana less for a Tragic Arrogance, essentially.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, I'm like, well, is it worth, like, if you're playing a Mardu deck, unless you want a second copy of Tragic Arrogance, is it worth jumping through that hoop just to save 1 mana over just running Tragic Arrogance?
Maybe. I mean, if you're in a Mardu deck, yeah, probably.
Okay.
Why not run them both? I mean,
maybe run them both, right? I'd be tempted to run them both. I like Tragic Arrogance a lot. Are any of these other mythoses that you like?
Okay, so we have the Mythos of Brokas. That's the Sultai one.
Yep.
You search your library for a card if Sultai was spent. Otherwise, and put that card in the graveyard, then shuffle your library. Otherwise, it just returns 2 permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. That's an okay recursion spell for 4 mana. Worst case scenario, you get 2 things from 2 permanents from your graveyard to your hand.
The Mythos of Nethroi is kind of the weirdly worded one.
Yeah.
Destroy. It's 2 and a black. Destroy target non-land permanent if it's a creature, or if Selesnya was spent to cast a spell. So you can target anything, and it's only destroyed if it's a creature, unless you spent the Abzan mana for it.
Right.
Totally. So that means basically if you spend green, white, black, you can destroy any non-land permanent, which is pretty good. But I'm also like, you are in already the colors that have access to every good removal spell.
I was going to say, like Assassin's Trophy?
Or Beast Within, or
Generous Gift, or...
Right. And you have Swords of Plowshares and Path to Exile in those colors, and things like Crush Contraband, and...
every black destroy spell.
Right. So, like, if we think of this as just being in Abzan color, so if you think of the casting cost on this as just being green, white, black to destroy at instant speed a non-land permanent, and I'm playing Abzan, I don't know.
No.
I don't know if it makes a cut.
I mean, it is good to note that this of the cycle is the only instant.
Yeah, that's true.
But I do agree, if you're playing an Abzan deck and if you're thinking about this spell as costing green, white, black, I wouldn't run it. There's better options. Because when you think about it in that light, you need all 3 colors.
Right.
Otherwise, you just have a 3 mana, Doomblade.
Yeah, which isn't great. One last cycle we can mention is there's a cycle of enchantments that are in each of these wedges too, and they all do very different things. For example, talk about Song of Creation, which is 1 green, blue, red, so it's in the Temur colors. Whenever you play an additional land, you may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever you cast a spell, draw 2 cards, and at the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. That seems like a really steep price to pay, but man, I would be super tempted to run that in a Jeskai deck, I think, just being a Temur deck. 1 additional land, draw 2 cards, then you have to pitch your hand, but like, I don't know, you're going to do a lot of crazy stuff on your turn.
I mean,
what are your thoughts on it?
If this definitely goes into the Temur commander deck with the spell swinging Dino, because you're going to cast the spell, draw 2 cards, copy it. The copy doesn't get cast, but now you have more fuel to maybe untap that Dino, or find another spell that you can cast and draw more cards. This definitely plays into the whole spell slinger theory.
If you're trying to do some kind of a storm thing, gets you all the gas you need that turn. If you happen to be playing some kind of a deck that doesn't have counter spells anyway, like there are some decks where there's like, I'm just not playing counters in blue because I don't have room for it in my deck, and then you they just don't have a ton of instant speed spells either. Maybe there's just not a lot of downside to losing your hand every turn. If on your upkeep you're going to be able to, then draw 4 cards in your main phase. Who knows?
So this is what I find funny, and this is pretty much, in my opinion, demonstrates everybody who loves Simic with this card, comparing it to the Jeskai card in this cycle, Whirlwind of Thought. So the Temur card, you get to play an additional land. Whenever you cast a spell, you draw 2 cards, but you do have to discard your hand at your end step. Where the Jeskai one, same mana cost, 1 in Jeskai. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, draw a card. Why is the Jeskai card only drawing a card? And why is it so specific?
About non-creatures? I mean, because there's no downside of having to lose your hand at the end of turn, I would guess.
True.
So, like, if you're planning on using your counter spells and doing things at instant speed, you lose the trade-off to gain the You lose the downside to have a lower upside, maybe, kind of, is the thought?
Maybe. I mean, what stopped them from printing whenever you cast a creature spell on the Teamer one? Like, then you're actually telling people, you need to kind of put this in a creature-heavy deck.
Well, here's the interesting thing, though, is I would be very... I wouldn't put the Teamer one in every Teamer deck. It would have to be a kind of a specific deck where I'm doing a specific thing. Conversely, the Jeskai one, the Whirlwind of Thought,
goes in.
Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, draw a card. I'd be really tempted to put that in just in any Jeskai deck. Because like you're just, when you're playing Jeskai, you're just going to cast enough creature spells. I mean, I've never seen a Jeskai deck that's like running 30 creatures. It's almost always less than 20, which means half of the spells in your deck, probably half the cards in your deck, not just spells, half of the cards, if you ignore lands, are going to draw you a bonus card. So like in almost any Jeskai deck, I would run that, whereas the Teamer one, I feel like, is a lot riskier.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and even things like Narset, the free cards that Narset generates when she attacks, those are cast, essentially. You cast those cards for free. So in a Narset deck, you get to draw for casting your free cards, because that's what Narset needed.
Very true.
Any of the other ones in this enchantment cycle jump out at you?
I mean, the Sultai one just gives your graveyard delve, which is fun.
Because what can go wrong with that?
Yeah.
No bad things ever happen when just randomly giving things delve.
The Mardu one is terrible.
Mardu, yeah. I mean...
It's Mardu. I mean, what are you expecting?
It's conservative.
I think the Abzan one is unique. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, mill yourself for 2, then return a creature card with lesser CMC than cost than the creature that died to the from your graveyard to your hand. And then you can sacrifice it to gain life equal to the greatest converted mana cost among creatures you control. So that's interesting because it's playing your graveyard. It has that life gain feature on it, but I still think it's kind of because it isn't a May. You do it.
Right. Well, are there any final specific cards here at all? It doesn't matter what type they are that you just find interesting and want to talk about from you, Max?
You know, I'm actually more impressed with a lot of the cards from the commander decks than Ikoria proper. There are a lot of cool things like Barrier Breach that exiles up to 3 target enchantments for 2 and a green for an instant, and it also has cycling. That's cool. I don't know how often I'd run that over something like a Deglamour or, Unravel. Or
Back to Nature just destroys everything for 2 mana. Hits your own stuff, too.
Right.
And the exile might be relevant here if you play in a place with a lot of gods or something.
Mm-hmm. I really like the new Vivian.
I do, too. I like her a lot.
Luca is cool. I don't know where I'd play him, but he's very cool.
Yeah. Do you have, or have you thought about putting classification in your...
Not at all. It's too much mana, and it taps the creature.
Okay. I was wondering if that was going to be a thing.
So, someone asked me on Twitter, I think, about that. They're like, hey, you're probably putting this in Tuvasa. I'm like, if it didn't tap it, yeah, I'd pay 7 mana for that. But the fact that that deck is so aggro-based, I mean, you've been in games where it wins in, turn 4 or 5. And it's also a deck where it
or at least kill somebody turn 4 or 5.
Right.
Maybe if it doesn't win, somebody's gone.
Right. I mean, we'll blame the whiskey that night, but whatever. But it's a cool card. It feels like Colossal Hammer on an enchantment.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, and like looking at my decks, I that was my same thought. I was like, well, do I want to put it in Sigard? And I'm like, 7 mana. Okay, I can pay that. I'm like, but it taps my creature. And I'm like, I don't like that.
The magical Christmas land play for me would be I'd have to have Sigarda's 8 out and then cast this on, my opponent's end step, tap Tuvasa. It goes to my turn. I untap Tuvasa.
I think I am going to put it in my Kresh deck.
Oh, for sure.
Because I don't care there. Like, I'll put on a creature and then just fling it. So, that's the plan. And then, presumably, if Kresh is in play, then Kresh gets however big that creature is, plus the 20/20 off the classification encounters onto Kresh. So, I am going to try it out there, but... Yeah, I thought the same thing. I just didn't do much for me in my Enchantress deck at all.
I do like that Stonebrow Krosan Hero got a new friend to play with.
Which one is?
Proud Wild Bonder. It's 2 hybrid gruel for a 4/3 human. It has trample, and creatures you control with trample you may have this creature assign combat damage as though it weren't blocked. And for those who don't know, Stonebrow Krosan Hero is from Time Spiral. It's 3 red and a green for a 4/4 legendary creature Centaur Warrior. It has trample, and whenever a creature you control with trample attacks, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So Trample Tribal just got a win condition.
That did not even occur to me as but yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's a good card for that deck.
I saw that card get previewed. I'm like, oh, I want to build Stonebrow now. because there's so many things that give trample counters are cards
Right.
with trample intuitively. So it's like, okay, this could be a cool, just stompy, beat face type deck. Especially with Quartzwood Crasher, the dino that tramples, and then
Yep.
whenever a creature you control with trample deals combat damage to a player, make an XX green dino token where X is the amount of damage those creatures dealt to that player. That'd be fun.
Yeah. I do want to mention Migration Path here briefly, because we've talked enough about Explosive Vegetation and not liking it. It's essentially Explosive Vegetation with Cycling 2. However, I do think it's really easy just to put Cycling onto a bad card and have it be relevant. There's a Neutralize in this set, which is basically cancel with Cycling 2. Having Cycling on a counterspell doesn't make it not a bad counterspell, because for the most part, particularly in Commander where you're playing decks that have access to every card ever, and you have 3 opponents versus 1, the situations where you're like, oh, I guess this counterspell isn't doing me any good, I'll get rid of it, that's pretty slim. That's not going to happen. However, a ramp card, particularly one that costs 4 mana, when you get to turn 9 and you draw that feels bad to have in your hand, because you're like, I don't want to spend 4 mana to ramp that I don't need and take up half my mana to do so. Being able to pitch it, though, for 2 and draw something else does make it a lot better than it would have been otherwise to draw on turn 9. So it's still something that, you can play on turn 4 and get your 2 lands, and if you happen to draw later in the game, it's not totally dead. I do think the Cycling is relevant on Migration Path in a way that it isn't on Neutralize. I don't know if I want to start running 4-mana ramp spells are that underwhelming just for the Cycling option, but I did want to point that out. I do think that is a relevant ability on that card. Any other ones you want to comment on in any way at all, Max?
No, I think I'm pretty good here.
I mean, yeah, we could, and we've done this in the past where we've done these set reviews and we've talked about almost every card, and there's a gazillion of them here, and we could definitely go through all of them, but we just thought we would kind of focus on the top played ones in EDH Rec just to kind of do things a little bit differently. So I think we've covered all the ones in their top 10 list, and then kind of, if they were part of a cycle, touching those cycles too. So I think we've done that. Those are the cards people are at least playing right now, and we'll see how that shapes up for the future. All right, Ikoria stuff. Do you have your list of cards you want to pick up for decks already put together, Max?
No.
Not yet?
You
haven't
think
done that?
I'm a planner, Dana? Come on.
I do. I already have my changes set. I already have my little spreadsheet done. I'm good to go.
I'm good. I have one change. Now that the Archon of Valor's Reach is getting reprinted in one of the Commander decks, that card will finally go in Dromoka, and I will eventually hunker down for the foil of it.
Nice. Okay. I think that will wind up being a good card in that deck.
I hope so.
That's going to wrap up this show. Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate it. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. Our show was edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find him on Twitter at Ursa Bearwalker. You can find me at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at YSquishy1. We will be back on Thursday with a deck tech. Until then, I am Dana.
And I'm Max.